Let's get to the story of the day. I was born into a normal working class two-parent house in South London with no religious affiliation, with the family motto, "It's not real unless I can hit it." When I was 4 years old, I was placed in a daycare where I was abused by a priest and a local police officer. I started primary school when I was 4.5 years old. I was subjected to brutal sexual assault by the head mistress and school inspector for the following 2.5 years, resulting in major depression, and still no alarm bells rang. We immediately regretted coming home with my parents and attending a new school because we'd moved smack dab into the UK residential equivalent of a war zone, with burnt out cars in the lawn and fights, shootings, rapes, and so on, at least once a week. The police were so scared of the region that they spent years petitioning the government, who eventually gave in and gave the council permission to pull down the entire estate to break up the place. From the age of 6.5, my life in that environment consisted of looking after my sometimes drunk mother and father while escaping beatings and mental torture. Because of the environment and to protect my 4 siblings, one of whom had breathing problems, both of my parents had turned to drink. Every night was a battle of individuals attempting to break in, damaged windows, or hearing shouting and fighting. I saw and felt things throughout my childhood. I had premonitions and knew things I couldn't, or more significantly, shouldn't have known. But I don't want to dwell on that here since it's so broad and unbelievable that I'm happy there were always witnesses who are still alive. One night, I stood outside my house and watched as a man stepped out into the street and shot at a police officer through the front windshield of his car. My terror was palpable. I promptly went back to sleep. My father's yelling woke me up as he held my mother to the floor in the doorway, threatening to hit her. She was definitely inebriated. When he saw I was awake, he came to a halt. I forgive them both since neither were model parents, but you only get one set of parents, good or bad. And as I grew older, I realized that they were just kids themselves, attempting to make ends meet. We were leaving to relocate to the coast when I was 15, and I was still an outsider who was harassed for being the kid from London. I soon met my amazing wife, Lorraine, and we moved in together within 3 months since I realized I couldn't live without her. We moved into our first home in November 1998 and experienced so many paranormal events that the church urged the landlord to seal the unit. Instead, we called in Jim, a fantastic man who ultimately became my teacher. He was 5 feet nothing, Irish, with huge ears, and as wise as the hills, so I called him Yoda. Jim was a spiritualist medium who summoned me to his flat. Something happened that shifted my perspective and launched me on an interesting 10-year adventure to investigate diverse occurrences. My son was born in 1999. Again, an unbelievable story. We ultimately married in 2002 and had a baby girl in 2004 before moving to Ireland, where I lost my baby brother Daniel to sudden adult death in 2007. Daniel was the sibling I sat up all night watching breathe so he didn't die. It shattered me and I felt enraged. I fled Ireland with my family and fought to go from place to place in a state of destruction. The strain was increasing and my rage was unbearable. I walked into a doctor's office in May 2007 with a shoulder problem, and over the next 3 years, all of my medical records were so jumbled that I ended up on 24 medications that were not mine, as well as dozens of procedures and tests that were not mine. I also gained 10 stones and got increasingly ill, while the NHS insisted the records were correct, despite knowing they were not. We spent one day with my brother-in-law since we were homeless and he had lost his mother. Michael and my late brother were great friends, and I had known him since he was a toddler. He had a place because I knew him. We needed a place to live and he needed company, which benefited both of us. I rested on the bed and closed my eyes, and after a time, I saw a man's head appear before transforming into a snake, which startled me awake. I made my way downstairs, nervous because I don't like snakes. We ate and played cards because there was no TV in the living room at the time because we were waiting for one. We went to bed at 11 p.m. and because my daughter and son both had colds, I slept in the single along the wall with the baby and my wife and my son on the single on the other side of the room. I sat straight upright at 3 a.m. because there was a light. I knew it was this time because the digital alarm clock shined triumphantly, but it was not the only thing gleaming. It took my brain a moment to register that the entire room and everything in it sparkled with a magnificent light that didn't hurt my eyes. Why is the sun up? I recalled thinking. I placed my hand on the bed and spotted a similar hand next to it. I immediately recognized the hand I was staring at as my own, since I have a scar on my left hand that resembles a Klingon emblem from Star Trek. I recall turning to face my body laying still in the bed, not breathing, and saying, "Oh well, he's dead." Not "I'm dead," as if I already knew it was a shell. Remembering that moment always makes me smile for some reason. As my detective nature kicked in, I thought, I know I'm dead, but I need to prove it and get back to Lorraine. I felt the cold wall by touching it with my hand. I looked around and noticed a white pair of sports socks shining on the top of the dresser, and I remember thinking to myself, how did she get them that bright? You think stupid things as a person, don't you? There was no fear, frightening feelings, or negativity, and I will fail spectacularly if I try to convey how I felt, but I will try. Imagine peace, true peace, quiet, love, joy, bliss, acceptance, and being enveloped in bubble wrap and cotton wool by everyone you love. There was no concept of a negative emotion, mood, or thinking. They were foreign. By an unfathomable distance, I have failed to describe it, but I'm confident those who have experienced it will become emotional when they recall it. I instantly planned a strategy. I reasoned that if I could get to Michael downstairs and listen to his BBC World Service on the radio next to him, which I knew aired every 15 minutes, I'd be able to hear the news, remember it, and possibly get back into my body. I was alongside him before I knew what I was thinking. As though it were normal, there was no walking, no sense of travel, no surprise. That was my experience upstairs, as well as here with Michael. I paid close attention and memorized the specifics. I thought about upstairs at the end of the message, and there I was. I honestly felt that I was one of many who comprised the one, and the one comprised the many. I understood I was inextricably linked to everything in existence and time, every molecule and atom. It was the most heartfelt apology for my errors. It hurts me because it was so complete and pure love and peace. I thought I could stay there, but then I saw my son, wife, and ultimately my baby girl, and something told me I needed to be there for them. As soon as that thought crossed my mind, it was as if the offer had been withdrawn and my decision had already been made. But if I went back, I would be in a lot of agony and suffer through hell. I agreed, and two things happened at that point. One, I felt everything I'd ever done, said, didn't do, didn't say, and all outcomes as if my entire life was written out in feelings in all my choices, impossible to express. Then, I saw a chalkboard with text I couldn't understand, and the chalk rubber was scratching the words out until they were clear, and I felt as if I were given a blank rolled up scroll, and I heard a voice that still gives me goosebumps because I miss him so much. In a beautiful South London accent, the voice remarked, "There you go, boy. Have another try." My grandfather died of cancer when I was 4 years old, and my last recollection of him was being held in his arms. I looked about my body and reasoned that if I held my breath and laid down, all the blood and intestines would stick somewhere. After all, if Patrick Swayze can do it, so can I. It felt like an empty suit of armor as I laid down and wrinkled my nose. I began to rock and tremble in an attempt to stick to something when the sound of fizzing like bursting candy combined with buzzing appeared all around my body, and I awoke in the dark, drawing a big breath, aching like hell. I woke my wife up, told her what had happened, filmed all I said, and later examined it, but first to the hospital. On Friday, July 19, 2009, I went to the hospital for a comprehensive cardiac examination. The results were sent to the same cardiologist, who indicated many weeks later that the heart and blood showed that it had halted and changed pattern or something. Anyway, I was in full love thy neighbor Bob Dylan mode. I had vivid dreams and memorable experiences until we lost our baby the next month, after which I had no recollections until 2015. I was a human shell, bedbound for 6 years, and my wife and family kept me alive while the NHS medicated and treated me. I had many personality traits, but I was essentially a fearful youngster. In 2015, I awoke in a foreign house, in an unfamiliar neighborhood, and with 39 stones. I shed 10 stones, stopped using narcotics, and am now battling my way back. I schooled both of my children, one of which is currently pursuing a career as a computer engineer, and the other as a nurse, while my wife is pursuing a career as an accountant. So much love from them kept me alive, and I will never be able to repay them. All I can do is give them everything I have, to push them and let them know I will always be there for them. I don't have an ego, no material desires, no desire for glory or anything else. I enjoy sitting quietly and observing the wind or rain, clouds in the sky, or simply sitting peacefully. I'm changed, and I know I touched God's face, or whatever you want to call the source. I was awakened last week by what sounded like hundreds of angels singing in unison in a vast hall. It was so loud that it shook my bedroom and caused the CCTV outside to flash at 4:44 a.m. As I cupped my ears, I shouted out to my wife, and when she awoke, it was as if the volume had been turned down. I don't feel alone, and I know a lot of things I've never said or written, and I'm thinking of writing a book to dispel the myth of death and the love God has for all of us. Nobody needs to be afraid. This has been really difficult to write, let alone read. So please bear with me and leave no nasty comments. Everything I write is completely accurate and easily verifiable. I'm writing because I've struggled with my identity after my NDE, as if the old me is someone I don't know, especially like or comprehend. I want to meet people, listen, make friends, and learn, because unless you have had an NDE, you have no idea how it feels or how much it alters you and your entire outlook on life. Ironically, I felt more alive there than I do here.